Welcome to Parent Coaches Unleashed, the podcast where we dive into the highs, lows, and did that really just happen moment of parenting teens and young adults. We're Carrie and Jessica, parent coaches, mythbusters, and occasional referees in the battle of hormones versus common sense.
If you've ever wondered, is this just happening to me? You're not alone. We're here to help you with real talk, expert advice, and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Need more support? We also offer private coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements because sometimes even parents don't have all the answers.
So continue listening as we tackle this parenting journey together. Welcome to Parent Coaches Unleashed, the podcast where we dive into the highs, lows, and did that really just happen moment of parenting teens and young adults. We're Carrie and Jessica, parent coaches, mythbusters, and occasional referees in the battle of hormones versus common sense.
If you've ever wondered, is this just happening to me? You're not alone. We're here to help you with real talk, expert advice, and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Need more support? We also offer private coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements because sometimes even parents don't have all the answers.
So continue listening as we tackle this parenting journey together.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning. Bright and early here.
So I'm going to jump right in. I was working with a client who parenting right now. She has recently thrown into the mix parenting her early parents. So Carrie and I got to talking about this and realized that so many of us are in this, we're calling now the sandwich generation, where we're parenting our teens, young adults, and parenting our parents. So we decided to reach out to a professional, Alan Rosenthal, a state planner, to ask him some pressing questions for dealing with these issues. Hi, Alan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
So just jump right in, and I feel like deal with the easy part of this first.
Is there an easy part? It's so easy because
It's easy.
so Jay, things not easy, and now we've realized in the middle of our lives, I'll have to parent our parents in addition to parenting our children. For that.
Right. Well, let's go with the least convoluted part of it, the most direct part. We have a teenager who has turned 18. Now, legally, what do we need to know? Because I know we've spoken about this before, but there's this arbitrary age of 18 where somebody just assumes that these kids that we've cared for all of their lives are completely able to be responsible for their finances, for their health care, for everything. What say do we have in that as parents?
The state of Florida says they're adults when they're age 18. But as we all know, they're far from being adults because the state gives them rights. We as parents, although we support them and we pay for their tuition and we give them money and we give them advice, no longer legally have any of those roles that we can play without them, because they're adults, giving us rights to be involved in these affairs. And it's difficult because how many 18-year-olds are really mature enough to be doing all these things? Certainly not many that I know, but up with the law. So because the law says this is what happens when they're 18, we as parents, and you're right, this is the easier part, so we're just going in a second, but we as parents really need to have a conversation with before they're 18. We don't want to wait till they're after 18, because what we need to do is have them understand what the law says and also have them understand the benefit of them making these decisions in writing. And when we're talking about these decisions, we're talking about financial decisions as well as medical decisions that us as parents can legally act on their behalf. And these documents are two. It's the durable power of attorney, which is for financial decisions. It's some people call it a healthcare surrogate or a healthcare directive. We can make medical decisions for them.
The same as a healthcare proxy? Is it the same?
It's the same concept. Some people call it a healthcare directive, some call it a healthcare proxy, healthcare surrogate. It's basically saying I'm 18 and my own decisions, I am allowing you, meaning my parents, to the ability to make medical decisions for me if I can't make for myself. And it would want to be in crisis mode. We want to do this when we're not in crisis mode.
We doing this like the day they turn 18, before they turn 18, before they leave the house? What's the best time to these signed documents in place?
Sure. So they can't sign them till they're 18.
Okay.
So this is they're 17 and 3/4 when they're, 60 days away from the 18th birthday. These are documents that you should have prepared that need to be witnessed and notarized. And, 18th birthday, before we go out for your birthday celebration, we're going to go and sign some legal documents. But the other part of this, before we take them to the signing, they have to understand what they're signing, because unfortunately, I've had some 18-year-olds that say, I don't think I want to sign these.
No, really?
Yeah. I mean, they say, well, I'm not sure I want to give up these rights to my parents. Those are the exception, but it certainly happens occasionally. So it's a open, honest conversation that they know what they're signing, and they understand the benefits of doing so.
What do the parents do in that situation?
Well, there's a little bit of embarrassment, a little bit of frustration. There's a little bit of, do you realize I'm still supporting you, and you realize that I'm paying for your tuition and your gas and your car insurance? So most times it's just prolonged meeting, but it eventually turns into
getting a signature.
Or maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's not even the parents. Maybe it's, an older sibling. If they feel more comfortable for whatever reason, maybe it's another family member. But at least there's somebody
Right. Looking out for their best interest.
that has the legal ability to do it.
Right.
So what do we do with these forms when we have them? Do we keep a copy? Do the kids get a copy? What do we do with them?
And these should all be electronically saved. So we should have them on our phone. We should have them on our computer. The easy part is to give it to our children's doctor. But the hard part is we don't know in a crisis mode who their doctor is going to be, who the hospital is going to be. So it's easy to go to the doctor. It's easy to go to their college or university and say, here's a copy of it. It's the harder part is when we don't know we're going to need it. And that's why it should be accessible, that you could email it to whomever so that you have the ability to make these decisions.
That's interesting because at 18, at least for my kids, they were still seeing their pediatrician.
Correct.
But they turn 18, but nothing changed. I wonder, legally, are pediatricians required to have them sign something, or are they grandfathered in?
I don't think they're grandfathered in. I'm assuming they should have some sort, when they go into the office at the beginning, there's probably some HIPAA release that they sign when they get to the office that probably would cover it.
That's interesting. And do parents need to seek out an attorney for this? The company that we used, and I hope you're going to tell me that but Mama Bear is the company.
Yeah, I mean, no requirement to, hire an attorney. Obviously, there's attorneys that will be happy to help you with this, but any of good resources online, you want to make sure they're state specific. You don't want to create a document that's based in some other state when you're a resident of Florida or vice versa. But as long as it's governed by the laws and it's got the releases, those should be 100% perfectly fine.
And what happens if your 18-year-old or your now adult is traveling outside of the country? Do other countries recognize that?
They do. It's based on your home state. So even if they go to school in, a different state, they should be based on the state where they're a legal resident of. So it works in all the different states and all different countries. If they move to a new state, then they really should have documents updated to that state. Wherever their driver's license is, to sort of mirror these documents.
Okay. And you said Florida is ages 18. Is it different in every state?
I don't know the answer to that, but I would,
Okay.
I think most are 18. I can't tell you for certainty if every state is like that, but
Where would someone go to find out what their new adult age is?
I'm guessing the internet's probably, the safest bet to start. We 18 in most states, are there some states that might be younger, possibly, different driving ages and different.
Sure, that's true.
Like, maybe there's more Midwestern states that you could drive earlier and Northeast states where you drive later, but I'd use 18 as a pretty safe bet for
Yeah.
adults. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Right.
So
Dive in.
let's dive into the more challenging, the looming situation. Yeah. And hanging over us. Right. So,
I'll let you start, Carrie.
yes, a lot of experience with parenting my parents as my mom at a young age was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I am probably not the norm because I choice but to jump in, and I did have my dad's support in that. But say that's not the normal. So if you have healthy parents but they're aging and they have not planned and they are starting to signs of decline, can we do as their adult children now try to involve because their safety could be at jeopardy? Driving should not, be happening anymore. And they're not and allowing us to help. We do.
Out of area of all gray areas, right? I mean,
Jump in, Carrie.
when someone has capacity, you can't force them to do anything because you want them to do something. So let's look at it as to what can we do from a family situation? What can we do from a moral situation? What can we do from a child situation, which is having the open and honest discussion with our parents. And there's all different sets of parents. And the first thing is, do you have any planning in place? It's a simple question. And you're going to get some parents, they're going to say, oh my God, we've done everything. Yes, we do. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it. Let's make sure it's exactly what you want. Here's the name of my lawyer. This is
Oh my gosh.
fun.
That sounds wonderful.
With the A+ parents, right? Those are the ones that have taken care of it. Those are the ones that want you to be part of it. The ones that make your life easy, right? That's one extreme. The other extreme, to get out of the gray, is unfortunately your parents have been medically determined that they're incapacitated. And at that point, there may be less options available to them because they haven't done any planning and they haven't named a healthcare surrogate. They don't have a healthcare proxy. They don't have a durable power of attorney. Maybe less options available to them outside of going in front of a judge to become their legal guardian. And that's a terrible process because that can be avoided in a lot of different ways. And so you hope you're never at that point. So perfect is to start having an open, as I mentioned, conversation with them. And I find that there's some people that don't want to have these conversations for two reasons. One is they want to be private. They don't think it's your business. They don't want you to be involved. They think they're perfectly fine. The other one, which is I see a lot of times, is that people don't want to talk about their mortality. They don't want to talk about their incapacity. Favorite line is, by signing these documents, I have no control over your mortality. I have no control over what's going to happen to you. But you've put something in place for your children or your grandchildren or your spouse, these decisions. And a lot of what works is not one out of, three children bringing this up, but all three children bring it up, house bring it up. Having a uniform approach works a lot better than one or of a group. So it's working together as a team, explaining the benefits of it, and then going back to the privacy, people think, well, you want to know how much money I have or what you're going to get. And that's not really, the important part of what we're talking about. The important part is putting something together, making sure it's updated. Kids, meaning our generation, parents' documents still have who our guardians are going to be. Well, a little bit past 18 or so. So I think it's time that this is sort of dated, 40 years, whatever it is later, that we need to at least take a look at this. The laws probably changed from 1980 something when they did this, because they're smart. They did it when they had kids, but a lot of things that have changed since that point.
I'm assuming things change. They need updated bills and estate planning and everything, like when they've moved states, right? If they've retired, let's say they established it in New York and now they're living in Florida.
Exactly. I mean, the laws of each state are a little bit different. And the reason why you want to update it is because if you're going to a hospital in your state, or you're going to a bank in your state, or you're going to a doctor in your state, you want the people that you're trying to work with to have documents that they're comfortable with. That you don't want them to have to send it to their legal department and say, oh, this is a New York power of attorney and it says different things than we're used to. Can we enforce it? Or, a hospital saying, well, it doesn't say Florida statute, so can we really use it? So it's easy to update, you know, but it's important to do so for the very reason of, each state has different laws. And once you've left New York or any other state and you've moved to Florida or any other southern state, just have it updated. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it just makes it easier for the people who need to use the documents.
Which state go by the state where your will was drawn up? Does it go by the state of where your legal residence is? Like, let's say you're a snowbird and you have a residence in two different states. Which state is the majority? Which state overrules the other state? I don't know how to ask the question, but do you understand what I'm asking?
You can only have one domicile. You can only be a legal resident of one state. So there's laws in place in each state that affect which is your domiciliary state, which is the one that you're a legal resident of, because that affects taxation and that affects, what your rights are, and that affects where the court would be involved if your will needed to go through probate. So, and, snowbirds have that very issue. And, some want to be residents of the state where they came from, and some want to be residents of the state that they're moving to. And there's different reasons. And, a lot of it has to individually based. Some see benefits of being a resident of one versus a resident of other, but there's only one state. So there's not a conflict between two different states.
Okay.
So take the situation where I know that as an attorney, right, you're trying to manage the rights and give the rights to the elder person.
Sure.
But if they have not yet been determined incapacitated, but there is some show of decline, the children, adult children, are concerned, how do you guide the adult children to have some say or some rights when they're just trying to protect their parents?
I mean, that's the conversation is the reason and the only way to have that say, to get them to agree to providing you with the ability to have the say, because the person has the right to do what they want. And if they don't want anybody to be involved, you can't force them to be involved. We hope, and we talk about the benefits of having other people involved, and we hope it doesn't get to a situation where to go in front of a judge to get people involved. But we need parent to be involved. As an attorney, when I meet with an elderly client, explain the benefits of doing this. I explain why someone's not coming in to take away their rights, why we're not throwing them into a nursing home against their wishes, why there's benefits to having other people, because the other side is you might have someone who doesn't know you or your family making these decisions for you. You can't control what happens if you become part of the court system. So when you explain, would you rather have your children involved versus not having your children involved, it's usually an easy decision, easy answer. But again, they need to get in front of me, or they need to get in front of another attorney. So it's easy for you to have these conversations, and many hours of conversations, and you have to sort of focus on what's the important part. And I think if you focus on healthcare, I think that's an easier focus for people than it is when you talk about money, because money, people have different reasons when you're talking about, well, if you're on my bank account, how do I know you're not going to steal from me? Or if you're on my bank account, how do I know that my kids aren't going to be treated properly? Or I need money for the rest of my life, you'll inherit when I pass away. But if you focus on the healthcare part, a lot easier than when you go into a hospital for any surgery, they ask you, do you have a healthcare document, right? So the hospitals are concerned about it. So why shouldn't you be concerned at the same time for someone to make medical decisions for you, get medical information about you, and also make end-of-life decisions for you? Because we all live longer, but eventually there's going to be someone that we need to be there for us. And we always want to put multiple people on there. Spouse is often number one, but you know what? One of the spouses is going to pass away or be incapacitated before the other. So we need to have a second, and that's going to be one or two or three of the children. Or, if they don't have a spouse or children, then it's got to be, another relative or, even a good friend.
Is there a hierarchy? Does it go by the first person on the list is the one in charge of and then it goes to number two?
I mean, you can set it up any way you want. You can set it up with a list. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can do 1 and or 2 and or 3 or and or 4. It's just a matter of the comfort level. So if you had 4 kids, for instance, you could say any of my 4 kids can be involved. And that gives any of the 4 kids the same abilities, talk to the doctor, to find out what medication mom or dad are on, what need to be doing, as opposed to if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, then the doctor said, well, sorry, number 2, I can't talk to you. I need to talk to your brother or sister who's number 1.
Right.
And then number 1 has to call in and they put number 2 on the phone. So
Right.
what you just the and/or seems to work a lot better. I mean, sometimes with spouses, they want to do spouse 1, then any child 2, and that's common. You just need to be aware of that when the other spouse is incapacitated, you sort of prove it to someone. And this is all, based on HIPAA, which is the medical privacy laws, where there's financial penalties for doctors or hospitals if they release any of your information without the proper releases.
Thinking specifically also about a situation where your parent's spouse is not your parent.
Absolutely.
And the problems that can cause if care proxy is needed, if the children disagree with the...
Right. And in Florida, we're in the land of seconds, thirds, fourth marriages. I mean, it's not uncommon, and there's multiple players. And for those children of the spouse who is married to someone who is not their mother or father, this is the conversation. Do you want your spouse to be making these decisions? Do you want us? Don't create a situation where putting us together and saying we have to act together, because all you're doing is creating a mess. And the problem about making people act together, that if they don't agree, then nothing happens. But if you say to a hospital or a bank, I want my spouse and my 2 kids from marriage number 1 to be coming and doing everything together, it's hard to force people to do things. And nothing worse than creating a situation where you're causing a problem. The players, who gets along. You may want to pick your spouse. As long as you're making a knowing decision, then what happens to us as the children? Fortunately, we're behind the spouse. And that's, at least that's a knowing decision. It may not be one that we would choose and one that we hope they would make, but at least they are making a decision that they think is best.
So in looking forward at our situation that we found ourselves potentially in with our parents, can we do differently that we prepare our children? We do things now in advance. Is this the perfect time when we're in our 50s or mid 50s? Should we have already done this? Have already had conversations with our own children? Is there a perfect time or an ideal time that you recommend? And we do now to put things in place so our children don't find themselves in a situation where we are now with our 80-something-year-old parents.
And make us all the A+ parents you spoke about earlier.
Yes, we should all be having these conversations about planning. We should all be starting our planning if we haven't done it. I mean, the old adage is that we all should have done planning when our first child was born, right? We all should have had a will in place, because for the rest of our life until that point, it was just about money. And then when we had our first child, we needed to have a guardian for them. And so we should have done a will then. And if we haven't done a will and they're all adults now, well, I guess we didn't need to worry about a guardian. But when we're in our 40s and our 50s, we should have a plan that we start. And the plan obviously can be changed as many times as we want over our lifetime, but we should have conversations with our kids. I mean, if they're 12 or 15, that's probably not the age to be having conversations. But when they're college graduates and they're in the real world, so to speak, and they're, thinking about getting married and having their own family, these are good times to be having conversations with them. And it can be as simple as, I have a plan in place. Dad and I, mom and I have a plan in place. We've named each other to be in charge of our plan, but this is who we're using. These are where our documents are, and that we've named you to be the backup, and we've named you to be able to make decisions. Are you comfortable doing that? Right? I mean, there's many children that say at 21, 22, 25, 30, whatever age, yes, I'm comfortable. No, I'm not comfortable. And you also know your kids, right? Mm-hmm. You think they're in a good position. Do your kids get along? Hopefully all of our kids get along, but maybe they don't. Right. And you say, oh, I have 3 kids and they need to make decisions together. We don't want to create the problems that we're to envision later on. So I think once they're post-college is a reasonable time to have the first conversation with them if you haven't had it before. Do you need to show them the documents? Probably not, but it doesn't hurt if you do. This is where they are. This is what our thoughts are. Most legal documents don't talk about dollars and cents. So from a privacy perspective,
Right.
I don't think anyone really would be, harmed by seeing the documents. But, I think that makes sense.
And can you just tell us, what are the documents? What documents should we have?
Yeah.
So a health.
So there's basically three what we call lifetime documents. First one is the durable power of attorney. That's someone who can make financial decisions for you. That's someone who can go into your bank account, your safe deposit box, file your tax return, help you with government benefits, help you with disability, whatever it might be. That's the financial side.
Oh, wait, I just want to stop you right there. If you have this durable power of attorney, do you need to be listed as a person on the bank account as well? Or does that supersede being?
Yeah, the power of attorney would allow you to go to any place where your parents or the person naming you has assets. You don't need to be on there. So if you walked into the bank with the power of attorney, they would then give you rights to the bank. Same by anything else. The second one, as I mentioned before, was, some people call it the healthcare surrogate, healthcare proxy, healthcare directive. That includes a living will. And the healthcare really is three parts. One is who could make medical decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. Second is who can obtain your medical information, like call your doctor and say, hey, what medications are mom and dad on. Third is the living will, which is you want to be left alive on life support on machines if you're in what we call persistent vegetative state. If the doctors say there's no medical hope for you recovering other than being on machines, and that's, a personal religious type of for that part. The third document we touched on at the very beginning was you have the ability to nominate your guardian, so that if you got to a point where you hadn't done any planning and a court had to get involved, you would have a guardian that you could pick as opposed to somebody who doesn't know you. So those are the three what we call lifetime documents. They all end when you pass away. And then when you pass away, you have two options. You could have a will, or you can have a revocable trust. They're both fairly similar, meaning they both appoint people to be in charge. They both distribute your assets. A will is subject to what we call probate, which is the court involvement, where a trust is not subject to court involvement. So there's no probate. So oftentimes that makes more sense, as long as you trust the people you're putting in charge to not be under the guidance or the requirements of the court, then the trust makes more sense.
Is there anything that supersedes these persons' wishes? Like, is there, if you have a will in place, is there any other documents that they need, or is there anything that can come along and can the government come along and say, we don't agree with that?
No, the will by itself. But what usually happens, and not usually, but oftentimes happens, is that someone goes into a bank or someone goes into a brokerage account and they name a beneficiary or they name a joint owner. Any account that has a joint owner or beneficiary supersedes the will. The will only governs what you own. So if mom said, okay, I really like child one and they're the beneficiary of my bank account and everything else, and then in their will says, I give everything to my three kids, it's not going to go to the three kids because the will has been superseded by the account opening, because that's the way the account was opened. And that was a contract that was signed with the bank by when the account was open. But going back to the other question about the government isn't going to come in and change your wishes as to who's to be in charge, as long as the person qualifies, meaning as long as the person is over age 18, as long as the person is not incapacitated, hasn't committed a felony, there's certain rules that the government imposes as to who should be in charge. But as long as they meet those basic requirements, then the person you name is going to have the authority to act for you.
Okay. Got it.
Oof. That's so much. Right. So obviously we would be recommending our listeners to come and seek out you, Alan. But are there specific attorneys that handle different parts of our long-term planning here? Like, or is one type of attorney handling all of these things that you've discussed with us?
Yeah, I mean, most of what we talked about, an estate planning attorney can handle everything. So it's the lifetime planning and also the post-death planning. Um, there are probably subspecialties within that. And one that, I don't handle per se is Medicaid planning, which is a whole different area of law for people going through government assistance. But other than that, I think most estate planning attorneys handle everything. And, it's 5 or 6 documents that everyone should put in place that I think makes the most sense. And, there's other sophisticated planning beyond that, but I think that's really what we call the basics that everyone should have.
I'm sure you've many stories you could share about what's gone on in your office while making and filling out these documents.
I could write a book, but problem is I'd have to change all the names.
To protect the innocent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. This was a really informative discussion, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us.
Happy to help and happy to try and give you a little flavor of what people should do. It's a tough process. I love how you call it the sandwich generation because, we've taken care of our kids all these years and our parents have taken care of us. And, our kids, I start to think they're smarter than us and they don't need us, but unfortunately our parents do need us. So it's, we're sort of flipping as to who needs our help. And it's unusual and some parents may be resistant to it, but I think just having these conversations and going through it and keep talking, eventually there'll be some breakthroughs. And if not, just have to, get everybody involved.
I just thought of another question as you were saying that. I'm just curious about this. What happens if you have a tumultuous relationship with your elderly parent that you haven't been on speaking terms with them, and then for some reason they become incapacitated and they're not able to care for themselves? Does a child have a legal obligation to that parent?
No, there's no legal obligation at all. So there's no legal obligation to take care of a parent. There's no legal obligation. The same way there's no legal entitlement to inherit from a parent, right? It's
Right.
a two-way street. So, I mean, there's the moral, ethical, but if you don't have a relationship with the parent, my guess is you're probably not going to step in to want to help take care of them because for whatever reason, you don't have a relationship with them. So, it oftentimes falls on the people who are closest to that parent's life, whether it's a friend or a relative or a professional, hopefully we'll step in and get them the help that they need because unfortunately there's nobody else.
Right. Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's hard because there's no, there may be no one. That's the hardest part. There may be no one. And, hopefully everyone has someone in their life. And, it's sad when you meet with someone and they say, I don't know who can make medical decisions for me because I don't have children or I don't have a spouse and I'm a single person and I'm 85 years old and all my friends are 85 years old. And
Right.
then we're looking to, well, my friend's son or my cousin who lives in a state, right? But they're trying to do the right thing. They just don't know who the right person is to fill that role. And as you get further away, the real advice is you need to have a conversation with people. You can't put my best friend's daughter who lives in New York without telling them, I really don't have anybody and I'd love for you to be there. And this is sort of what I want and give them a flavor of what's important to you.
Has anyone ever come to you and said, Alan, I want you to be, I want it to be who? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, so I've gotten the calls from the hospitals that someone's there and I'm the person because they have nobody in their life. And, and the beauty is that I've had these conversations that I know, do they want to be left alive and life support? Do they want to be in hospice? Do they want to be at home with 24-hour care? Do they want to be with other people? And so at least I was able to have the conversation.
Right.
But when you name somebody else, if they don't know what you want, it's sort of them putting their personal opinion as to what they think is best. But why not tell them what you want? Because it's you and your life. So,
Right.
As much as you can do to be open, honest with the people in your life makes it so much better for them because Unfortunately, we're all living longer, but because of that, we're also getting into situations where we can't function as well as we could when we're in our 60s or 70s.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that's my hope for everybody.
You wear a lot of hats there, Alan.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if anyone would like to get in touch with you, Alan, what is the best way to reach you? Is it email, phone number? What's the
Phone
best
number?
way?
Phone number's the best. It's 561-347-1700.
Great. And we'll put that link on our episode.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. If you have any questions for us, you can reach us at info@parentcoachesunleashed.com, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica. Together, we can raise the next generation of independent, capable, and compassionate young adults.
We encourage you to send us an email with questions and feedback to info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Please remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica. Together, we can raise the next generation of independent, capable, and compassionate young adults.
We encourage you to send us an email with questions and feedback to info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Please remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey.